problem, no problem. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we were discussing this. So if we need to include some dynamic behavior to our website or a web page, we need to include the JS file. So that is what I was trying to show you. So now if you will
Okay.
see, this is a button, right? So this is a static thing until unless we do not put a handler function or something which we want to do dynamically on the click of this button, right? So we have
Mm.
included this particular function, but now we need to define this function that what exactly this will do. And now this is something which we will be able to do in JavaScript, because we cannot write function and other things in HTML. In HTML, we can only write tags, right? So this is the file. Let me open this and show you what exactly we have written. So in this, what I am trying to do is I want to particularly uh, get to this particular node h1, and I want to change this particular thing which is learning HTML. I want to change this heading. This is what I want to do, right?
Mm.
So I'll just show you. First of all, this is our website. If I'm clicking on this, click to change the heading. If I'm clicking here, it has changed the heading. Anusha is
Yeah.
my new student. If I will change it again, it is changing again. So it is basically changing the heading whenever I'm clicking it. So it is dynamic thing which is happening on the browser level, right? So
Yes.
what we have written here in a script is basically a function definition, and this function is getting called every time we are clicking that particular button, because
Button.
this heading change is being called. First
Mm.
thing, so in this, what we have done is we have used one of the methods from the DOM, which is document dot get element by ID. So by
Mm.
the use of this particular method, we are able to basically reference a element. So what exactly is element? Element is basically any of the node in our DOM. So this button is one element. This H1 is one element. So these elements we can refer. So one second, I'll just open this also. So in this particular thing, this H1, what you can see, this H1, what you can see, this is one element. This
Mm.
particular div is one element. This
Okay.
particular P is one element. So we can actually refer one element and then do whatever we need to do. We can change it, we can change the color of it, we can do anything with it. But once we need to reference it. So that referencing is being done with this particular command, document.get element by ID. Now, right now we have put this heading as the ID. So from where it is coming, we have given it a ID called as heading, right? So it is coming from here. So
Mm.
if I will change this, if I will change this to say something not not a heading,
Mm.
in that particular case, if I've saved it, if I'll go here, if I will click here, nothing will happen, because
Okay.
my function here is taking this ID which is heading, and
Mm.
heading, and when it is going to the HTML document, it is not getting any other tag with the heading ID. So what I can do
Mm.
is I can directly write a small code where I will say I will have some other uh, h2 tag, and then I can put heading as the ID of that. Say
Okay.
this is a
So
heading.
it means we need to have ID for
Yes,
sure. If we don't have ID, then we cannot execute that function, right?
yes. We will execute it. We are still executing the function on the click of the button.
Mm.
But when
Okay.
the
But
function
how
is
will you difference? Yeah.
yes, so the function is getting executed, but
Mm.
this particular statement is not getting any element. So we are not
Okay.
changing anything, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So now what I have done is I've created these two elements. So if I will save this, and if I will go here, you will see that there are two elements now. One is learning HTML, and this is a heading now. So you can see this is what is written, right?
Okay.
Learning HTML, this is a heading now, right? Now,
Mm.
if I will, and now the ID is element, ID is heading for this particular element. So if I am clicking on this, you can see this is changing now, right?
Yeah.
And if I will change this to this, and if I will do this, you will see if I'm clicking here, it is only changing the upper one. So this is how you can actually reference any element by ID. So you asked me one question that we need to have ID for sure, right? It is
Mm.
not required. If you want to specify a single element, and if you have given an ID, and if you want to reference that particular element only, then you can use by ID. But as we
Okay.
will move further in the course, you will also get to know that this is not the only element which is there. You can also that get
Okay.
get element by class name. That is the,
Yeah.
yeah. So by class name also you can refer. So then in that particular thing, whatever class you have given here, this class name you will be using. Now the other thing is, with class you can have the same class name for more than one element. So
Okay.
in future, when we'll go in much more depth about all these things, then I will also give you example of how uh, we can reference multiple elements and then try to do some change on that, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So but this was just to give you an idea that how JavaScript adds dynamic behavior and a code, how code works basically. So this would have given you some idea about it, right?
Mm.
Now coming back to our topics. I think you are now aware about HTML, CSS, the JavaScript. What is DOM? Um, how to write code for a website in HTML? Yes, this I've shown you the structure of HTML code. Okay. So the structure of HTML code, I've given you an idea about the tree structure. Uh,
Yeah.
Now I will just give you some more idea about about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So are you aware what exactly was there initially? So JavaScript was a, a language which was introduced much later. So
Okay.
you must have seen that we were only having HTML and HTML previously.
Yeah.
This was the only thing. So what this means is you were having websites which are only text based website, which is only plain text, and then they will have hyperlinks. You will click here,
Mm.
this will open another page, and then so these were just document type websites which are initially present. I'm just
Yeah.
giving you some idea about how the front end development or front end technologies has have evolved. So this will give you some perspective, right? So in
Mm.
HTML, these were the hyperlinks, and then these were opening different web pages, and this is how your whole big website was created initially. Then they introduced CSS for the styling, and then uh, in around 1994, Netscape is the company which introduced JavaScript, and it was not called as JavaScript, it was called as Mocha.
Okay.
So this was the language that they created, and this language was created only in 10 days. The JavaScript language, which you see now and for which we are spending so much time to learn, this was created only in 10 days.
Mm.
So it is a very lightweight language. That is what I wanted to communicate to you. And then
Mhm.
later on, so that was a very plain initial version of JavaScript which was introduced, and then there has been different revisions. Okay, and then when the JavaScript was launched, that was launched. So initially, I am very hopeful that you must not be aware that Netscape was the one of the company which launched this browser
Okay.
which which was able to have some dynamic behavior. So this particular Mocha gave a very dynamic behavior to the website. So
Okay.
initially, if you are writing a website, you need to write a website which can work in this particular browser. So websites used to be a browser dependent initially.
Okay.
that is something which you can not even think of right now. Ki how can someone have a browser which is not compatible with some other browser? As a front
Mm.
end developer, who will be writing code for say 5 different browser, right? But that,
Yes.
that is the case now, but that was not the case previously. So what has happened is most of the people, when this language was becoming popular, most of the people, they said that we will not be able to write different codes for different browsers. So
Mm.
say there's a browser Chrome and there's a browser Internet
Internet Explorer.
Internet Explorer, Netscape. So that is not the right thing to do. So a community of people came into picture, and then they made JavaScript as a standard, and which is called as ES,
Okay.
ECMAScript. Okay, so
Mm.
ECMAScript, whenever you will hear this word ECMAScript, you will have to be aware that they are talking about JavaScript. Okay,
Okay.
and ECMAScript uh, 5 and 6 are some major versions which they have recently launched. So which has introduced many different new features in this JavaScript. So we will also go through all of them, but just to give you an idea, so this is how uh, JavaScript has evolved. Now it has been controlled by this European uh, community. So and it is currently called as ES ECMAScript. And in this, there has been now some versioning or new versions coming up every year. And
Okay.
in that, the major version was ES6, which has happened around I think to 2015 or 2016. That was one of the major version. And after this, there has been some uh, minor upgrades which has happened to it. So you should
Okay.
just be aware about how the things have evolved basically. So yeah, this is how it is. Now I will come back to one more point which we were discussing initially, that your browser can only read these three technologies.
Yeah.
Then can you just give me some idea then how React is working?
I
How
think it is not the technology, right? It is a framework of JS, right?
okay. So are you aware about JSX? Have you seen a React code? Have you seen do you know what is JSX?
JavaScript and XML.
No, but what kind of code it is? It is a HTML or it is a JavaScript code or it is a mix?
And it is mix.
Yeah, you're right. It is mix. But now then, how if you are having a JSX file here in the front end code, how a browser will be able to execute it, because browser does not understand this particular technology JSX. It only understands HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Then how it will execute a JSX file? Okay, so yeah, so no, I'm just asking you questions to for you to think about it. Ki, okay, this is a valid question, and then logically you should be aware about it. That's why I'm asking it. So I'll explain to you. So in React, we write code in JSX so that
Mm-hmm.
it is easier for a developer to write it. So React works on component, and it is easier if you write a code in JSX instead of plain HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. It will save a lot of time for us if we write our code in JSX. And when we'll
Okay.
go to React, we will basically understand how to write code in JSX. So what happens is whenever you have your front end and whenever you have uh, React kind of library, and if there is a JSX file, whenever it goes to browser, before that there's one more step which comes into picture, and this particular thing is called as cross compiler.
Okay.
Cross compiler. So before these files, JSX files, are given to your browser, your JSX is basically converted into HTML, CSS and JavaScript.
JavaScript.
Okay. Basically, HTML and JavaScript, CSS files are different anyways. Those are .css file, which will still be there in your React code.
JS.
So, but your JSX file will be converted into HTML and JS. So that is done by cross compiler. So there are multiple cross compilers. The one which is used by React is called as Babel. So
Okay.
this is something which you should be aware that React is basically a front-end library. Angular is basically a framework, and these might have code written in some other technology, but in the end, a cross compiler will convert into these three kind of technologies, which will be read by browser.
So these cross compilers are already inbuilt for this Chrome and Edge, all those browsers.
Yeah. So whenever you are putting something for production or whenever you are hosting something, this
Hmm.
Babels will be a npm package.
Okay.
Okay, so they will automatically execute. So whenever you are putting something on production, you will basically have a step, and these will be the files which will do it. So you can also,
Okay.
I'll just show you. So you, if you want to read more about those things, you can also read about Babel. So Babel is a JavaScript compiler. So it does two things for React. One thing which is it does is Babel will convert your JSX code into your HTML JavaScript. The second thing which it will do is also that if you are, say, using a browser which will not understand the version of your JavaScript, it will also make sure that it will support the previous JavaScript versions or the new JavaScript version as well. So
Okay.
so you as a developer will not have to think ki my particular website will run into previous versions of browser or not, because it might be possible that there's some other company right now which is using Microsoft package for their whole office, and in that the browser which they're using is, say, 5 years old. So that
Hmm.
particular browser might not have the latest JavaScript version. So if
Okay.
your website is written in the latest version, it needs to have some compiler which will make it work for the previous browsers as well, which is also
Okay.
done by Babel. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So you can just have a look at it when you have some time. So yeah.
Hmm.
So this is about yeah. So till now we have gone through some good introduction to front-end and JavaScript. Now I'll cover two more topics in giving you an introduction to a JavaScript. So
Okay.
first of all, let's go through the definition of JavaScript, basically what exactly it is, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, it is a, so if you will go through the definition of JavaScript, it is called as JavaScript is a lightweight, single-threaded, interpreted, object-oriented, first-class functions scripting language which is asynchronous in nature. So I hope this is very clear to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, for me it is not. If someone would have told me this definition, it would be like, yeah, it would have gone through my head. So uh, I will explain each and every term. That's why I've written it in this particular manner. So let me just increase it. So lightweight means it does not require very huge compiler, or it is a very light framework. It is written only in 10 days. It is very light. So if you are running it on your client side, it really makes sense, because you cannot, because the processing power at the client side is not that high as on the server. So
Hmm.
that is one reason why you need to have a very lightweight language, and that is how it was kept in mind while designing this language as well. So the first thing, it is very lightweight. Second thing is single threaded. So first of all, are you aware about what exactly is multi-threaded and single threaded?
Like it's been decade I read about them.
Okay. Okay. So I'll give you some idea. So
Mm,
single threaded and multiple threaded language. In that, what happens is, in a single thread language, what happens is you do something, you execute task one,
mm,
and then you go down and then you execute task two.
yeah.
That is how things work. So there's only one
Mm,
single thread of execution steps which takes place.
okay.
In a multi-threaded language or in a multi-threaded environment, what happens is, say, suppose you have written some code here
Mm,
and it has some multiple threads.
mm,
So this particular system has some multiple threads. So your code, what it can do, it can execute task one here, task two here, task three here, and so on. So if you have, say, so how many
yeah.
number of threads you have will also
Fine.
define that how many parallel tasks can be done in parallel, basically. So this is basically a difference between multi-threaded and a
So,
single-threaded application. Okay, in a
mm,
single-threaded application, what happens is you execute this task, and then if second task will come into picture. So, and if this one is getting executed, it will be queued and then it will be queued. So you will have this task, then need this, then this. Okay, we will
if
also
the
see.
task one is having any issues, then the task two is not done, right?
Yeah, it is not done, or so we will come into that particular part, that the asynchronous nature has been introduced in the JavaScript, and that is why it is also called as asynchronous programming language. So what happens is, if this task one is getting halted right now, what
Mm,
JavaScript can also do is, its single thread can pause this key, you can execute here, and
mm,
I'll execute the second one. Once
okay.
you are done, I will come back to you. So it is
Okay.
now the single thread is then executing two. After that, it will execute three.
Mm,
While it is executing three, it has seen that this task is over. Then it will attend this particular task. It will complete
okay.
this, and then it will go to the next
So,
task which it is having. So that is
okay.
something which is called as asynchronous, asynchronous in nature.
Okay.
Okay. So single threaded and asynchronous. That is what we have seen now.
Mm,
Now I will give you an idea about what exactly is asynchronous and why it is so important in JavaScript. Because maybe I'm not aware, but maybe previously, if you would have seen some Windows application in
mm,
your childhood, you must have seen that on the screen, if you are having something, if you have clicked that button, tuck 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 tuck, say 10 times, you would have seen
mm.
windows like this. They have opened 10
Yeah,
times,
yes.
right? So
Yeah.
this happens because the code is stuck in this particular process. So what it has done is, when you are clicking on this button, open, 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 so it is still executing this. It is not able to open or do anything until this
Okay.
particular process will get finished. Okay.
Okay.
And as soon
Mm,
as you have clicked on this 10 times, it has queued. So it was executing task one, say, which was taking 2 seconds. In that 2 seconds, you got frustrated and you have clicked on the button 10 times. So it will then take task 2, 3,
mm,
4, 5 till 10, and all these will be to open a new window, open a new window, open a new window, and it will
mm,
queue all of them. As soon as these 2 seconds are over, these 10 windows will open, tuck 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 tuck, in a millisecond time, and you will see
mm.
that 10 windows like that. Okay.
Okay.
So that is the synchronous behavior. And now we have few features in current JavaScript which will make them asynchronous in nature, which we use basically for. So promise is one of the new thing which is introduced in JavaScript, which is asynchronous in nature. And the basic use of that particular thing is, whenever you are, say, using a API call, right? So say, suppose
Mm,
if you have task one, if you have task two, This task 2 is to get a data from server. Okay, this is your server 1. And from here you need to get a whole some 600 MB movie you want from here. Now, meanwhile,
Okay.
this particular data is getting sent from here to here. You do not want your other task to be stuck, right? So what you do is you actually use the asynchronous functions here to make sure that this can be done as a asynchronous task, and whenever this will complete, you can come back to it. So this is something which anyways I will also be able to which I will teach you in the API class. So we will also see how we can fetch data through APIs and how it is asynchronous in nature. But right now I have written a code which I will show you a synchronous behavior in JavaScript without using any asynchronous function. Okay, so let me 1 second. Okay, so I've written a very small function here. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So this is the code which I've written. This is saying learning JS. Okay, I'll
Mm.
just make it small so that we can see both the screens here. 1 second. Yeah, yes. So what I am trying to show you in this particular example is how the synchronous code works and what exactly is the shortcoming of a synchronous code. And
Mm.
in JavaScript also, whenever you are writing, you might write a synchronous code also. So you need to be aware that for the kind of task which needs asynchronous code, for example, for server side rendering or some data you want from server, some API calls. So that is where you need to use asynchronous behavior, which is available. So here, what I will show you
Mm.
is I have written a single heading here, which is learning JS, which is just to show. And then we have two buttons here. The first button is start counting, and the second button is reset button. You can see it here, right?
Mm.
And with these two buttons, I have two functions which are start counting, and the second one is reset count.
Mm.
And then we have this h1. So this h1, which is basically a count where which is 0. I have put the value 0. So
Mm.
what we will be doing is as soon as we will click on this button, some code will execute. If we will click on the reset button, some code will execute.
Yeah.
Let's see the code which is written here. Now, this is your first code. Uh, I hope that I do not have to explain you what are functions
Yeah,
and
I understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So here you can see I have written a for loop.
Mm.
In this for loop, it is getting stuck till it is counting from 0 to some 1 CR or something, right?
Yeah.
And then it is showing that particular value. Once uh, it is updating it, it is showing that value here on the
Mm.
count.
Yeah.
And then whenever we are putting reset count, whenever we are clicking on this reset, it will make the count value equal to z, and then
Zero.
that zero value it will put to the
Count
that
in
that
the
yeah,
zero place.
yeah, right. So let's click on start counting.
Mm.
So the start counting, what has happened is it has counted till here,
Mm.
whatever value I've written here, and then it has given us this. Now I
Yeah.
can click on reset, right?
Mm.
Now
Yeah.
if I'm clicking on start counting, and before it will show me. So if I'm clicking on here, you will see that it is taking 1 or 2 seconds. You can see the color changed, and it takes some time, and then it is showing here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So meanwhile, if I will click on reset, what will happen? So one second.
Okay, before it is getting changed, you are also clicking on reset, right?
Yeah.
So first it will show the change and then it will go to reset.
Yes. So I have just reset the page. What I am doing now is I will click here, and as soon as I will click here, I will go to reset and I will click it, and then I will put my cursor somewhere here. So
Yeah.
what will happen is it will change the value to this, and as soon as it will change to this, the first
Yeah.
code will be over, then it will execute the second code. So
Second code. Yeah.
so you might not even see this number, which is
Mm,
put it here, which it has put it here. So let's see how it will be seen.
yeah.
You
Okay,
saw?
I understand. Yes, yes.
And then if I am clicking it on the start counting once, and then
Mm.
meanwhile it is executing, I will click say
Click again.
5 times. So it should
Mm.
actually run this particular code, and I am adding this particular thing. So this particular 1 CR will become 2 CR, 3 CR, like this. So
Mm.
let's see that. I've clicked say some five
Mm.
some multiple times. So it is then executing all those functions now.
Mm.
So my cursor is somewhere there, but whatever
But
times
still
I've
it
clicked
is.
here, it is executing all those functions now,
Yeah.
because that is in its queue. So that is
Mm.
how the JS basically works. So this shows you that it is asynchronous programming language with a it is a asynchronous programming language, but it has both components, asynchronous as well as synchronous. And this is a synchronous behavior which we are able to see. And if we need to use asynchronous behavior, we have callbacks, we have promises which we use. Okay.
Mm.
So yeah, so I think with this, you will be able to understand what are single threaded and what is asynchronous programming.
Mm.
The other thing which are there is it is a scripting language. So
Okay.
do you know what are scripting languages?
By name, JavaScript, TypeScript.
So JavaScript is a scripting language. So what happens is whatever that you write, for example, in different terminals you would have written, say, for PowerShell you can write some script and then you can execute that particular code, and you can also make a file of those execution steps. For example, cd something you will write in a terminal, and then you will write, say, open that particular folder, then do some change, make a new file in it, and then
Yeah.
close that particular folder. So you must have
Mm.
different lines of code here, which is basically a scripting which you are doing, and these files can be put up into a list of different lines of code, and that whole code can basically execute. So
Mm.
this is basically a scripting way of writing a code, or this is basically a scripting language. So
Mm.
JavaScript is also a scripting language, and these scripting language basically run in a runtime environment. So those particular scripts which you are writing for, say, PowerShell, which is in the
Mm.
Microsoft, you have the PowerShell, right? So in PowerShell, whatever the script you are writing for PowerShell as a runtime environment, right? But if you are writing JavaScript code, your runtime environment is basically your web browser. Okay,
Okay.
so your web browser acts as a runtime environment, and whatever code that you are writing, or it is basically getting executed there. So it is basically a scripting language. Then
Okay.
one more thing which you will see is it is called as first class functions. Okay,
Mm.
but in this particular language, this is a very unique feature of JavaScript, so which you will not see in C++. In Java, I think they have introduced now, but it is not there in Java also. But in C++ or C, you will not see this. So what it means is first class function means you can actually use a function as a variable. You can assign a function to a variable,
Mm.
which is only available in JavaScript, and it is a very unique feature. So that is something
Okay.
which you will not see in C++, right?
Mm.
So that is why it is called as first class functions. Now uh, comes the final part of it, which is it is a interpreted language. Okay, so I need to explain this with the help of pad. 1 second. So it is an interpreted language. So do you know what are interpreted language? Or do you know what are compiled language?
C
Yeah, C is a compiled language, right?
frontend language. Yeah.
Yes,
Python
yes.
may be interpreted.
Yeah. So what do you mean by interpreted or a compiled language? What
So
difference? Maybe
you
don't.
need a compiler for
Yeah.
compiler.
Hmm.
And interpreter is like, I think it is already compiled maybe.
Hmm. Not already compiled, but one behavior which we would have seen is whenever there is a compiled language, there's one more step before the execution of the code
Mm.
of that
Mm.
particular language. For example, if you are
Mm.
writing a code in C++, you
So
must have some compiler. This compiler will take your whole code,
mm.
will do a processing, and then compile this
It
particular
will
code,
exist.
which can get executed, right?
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
interpreted code, what happens is your particular engine which will run this particular code interpreted